Secrets. This was a conversation I had with a men's group last night. Now, it was an interesting men's group, and it was the first time that I had actually been outside of a men's group since the time that I spend in Wake Up Warrior. I met Doug Bates on a Facebook group of podcast guests, and we released the episode of my podcast with Doug on the Intuitive Man show. Doug was in Australia, and we just had this incredible conversation. You know, the kind of conversation that it doesn't make sense when you meet somebody why you were connected. But as I was listening to the 2 hour show yesterday in my car, it really kind of became obvious of why and how God uses people together, how we connect to each other. And we had a men's group as a result of this. He's had past guests, and he had asked me if I had wanted to be part of this show. And I told him it would be an honor and that I thought it would be something really cool. Well, again, this was the first time that I had joined another men's group without knowing any of these guys. I talk a lot about the men that I run with, the experiences that we have, the planning that we do, and a lot of the stuff was completely different. So I get into this conversation with these other men, and it just felt like I'd known these guys for a really long time. But Doug had asked the question, about secrets. Part of the conversation that he and I had had on our podcast was about a quotation that my mentor and coach Garrett J. White had thrown out. And the statement was, the most powerful man in the room is one with no secrets. Now, when I first heard that, I never really understood what that meant. So yesterday when Doug was talking about this, that was a quote that really just stuck with him. When we were doing a discovery call a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about this very thing in my journey and the releasing of my book, Walking in the Garden. And Doug had already ordered a copy of it after the conversation that we'd had in this discovery conversation. And he's asking me all of these questions about my psychedelic experiences and the experiences I was having with leading other men, and just kind of getting into the life's work that I'm really engaged in right now. We launched this book, Walking in the Garden, 2 weeks ago. And I'm really super excited about this book because I've had so many people who have come to me and just said, wow, it happened to me. Like, I really have struggled with that, or it fueled me to do something else. But to be able to put the book out there and to have these comments, it was just this like really liberating feeling, I guess is the only way that you can describe it. So when Doug and I are having this conversation about secrets, and we're sharing conversations about the past, and I'm really kind of walking through my experience, when you're on the outside of that and you're hearing it, but then again, when you go back and you hear it in a recording like this, and you see the video conversation and you see the interactions, there were so many times for both of us that we were just having these aha moments. So, again, going back to this conversation last night, this secrets conversation, I began to start to tell my story and to share, where I actually was in my life and the work we were doing. And again, to total strangers, like I'd never met these guys, and they're from all over the world. So it was really, again, it was a super exciting thing. But as we began to talk about that and to be able to share, my whole kind of life story with these guys, one of the guys actually came in and he had said, what about, my 90-year-old father, who I have a couple of things I would love to get off my chest, but it's going to break his heart, or it's going to do this. Or I was having a conversation with another friend about some trauma that they had had early on that they were discovering, with family stuff. And how do I handle that? And I had begun to say, you know, there's a time, and Garrett actually had this other quote, which is part of what we live in Warrior, called real, raw, relevant results. Real, raw, relevant results. And it's part of our code. It's part of what we live every day. Meaning that you have to be authentic. You have to be able to communicate what it is that is in the innermost thoughts and heart. And again, so when we say no secrets, that means just being 100% open and honest. Now, again, if I were to walk into a room and just start spewing my life story, it's probably not the most appropriate time. It's probably not, for a lot of people, could be something that isn't relevant. So it's one thing to be real, but is the conversation relevant in that particular moment? So again, I say to this gentleman on this show that we're on, this roundtable discussion, that it's great that you have to or want to get this off your chest to talk to your father, but if he's 90, is it relevant? And he began to think about that, and he's like, now it makes sense. So what is it from the real and the raw and being open that is either going to cause more damage or it's going to be free? And you have to ask this question to yourself, and why are you saying what you're saying, and why do I need to get that out there? So I was kind of thinking about that, and I woke up this morning and I was just thinking about the impact of this conversation. Here I am with these gentlemen that I've never met before. We're having these incredible conversations about where we are, and then I began to think about that from my own personal life, my own perspective of where am I showing up? It's one thing to be able to tell everyone in a book, that here's all the stuff that's going on in my life, and here it is, and if you choose to read it, that's incredible. But what relevancy would that have to walk up to a total stranger and say, hi, my name is Alan, and here's all the things that I've kind of gone through? So there has to be in our daily lives decisions that we make to be able to really discern, why am I saying what I'm saying, and is it even relevant, to be able to actually do that. So secrets, we all have them, and we all want to do something to liberate ourselves from them. But at the same time, is it relevant? So that's the question that you have to ask yourself. So, I have stepped away from the cost of doing nothing for a while. I've been working on a bunch of other, just different things, trying to get the book launched, and asking myself, what's the best way to do this? And the feedback that I've gotten has just been, again, so incredible. It's been so incredibly humbling that, I took this idea that I had from this journey that I've been on for the last couple of years, and watching other men find connection back to God and to find a connection back to their own selves just through and in medicine. I thought I was moving beyond this show and getting ready to launch another show that's really more focused just in the science and psychedelic side, but they're all really interwoven to me, because the more that I see that I grow, the more that I see the relevancy, I guess, for wanting to continue the show. So after a few weeks of having some conversations with Bryce, my engineer, and really doing some soul searching, I decided that I wanted to continue the show. And it is something that has been a really cool journey for me to watch in my own life. When I started the show 49 episodes ago, I heard a lot of the doubt in my voice and the imposter syndrome is what we talked about. But in reality, it was because I still was trying to figure out all of the stuff that was going on in my healing process that I wasn't willing to let go of. So we're back. We're 100% assured. And I think the tone of the show is going to be a little bit different. I think for me, it's going to be what are my daily insights? What are the interactions I'm having with people? And how is that affecting? Because, again, great case in point. I got up yesterday morning and I've been tracking sleep scores, and I've been so focused on getting the right amount of sleep. I was in a conference room for a meeting, and people were talking about all of the fun things that they do. Like they go and they binge watch TV. I'm like, oh, I don't watch TV. Or I go and do this. I'm like, well, I read. And then I started to think about that, and I'm like, you know what? I don't do a lot of things that are just mindless. And I had this conversation with one of my warrior brothers who was here in town, and we went to grab a beer last weekend, and he says, "What do you do for downtime?" I'm like, "Well, I fly, or I do this, or I do that, or I write, and I just finished a book." And he's like, "What do you do that doesn't require thinking?" I don't think I had one. So I was stacking and talking to God yesterday, and I'm like, you know what? I need to have more fun. I need to focus more on fun. So getting these kind of insights into my daily life are things I want to share with you. I don't want to have just some guests. So I think a lot of this is going to be my own thoughts and my perspectives, and really just opening up and telling you where my heart is and where it has been over this last year in this journey. And in that spirit of fun, yesterday was Wine Wednesday and Donut Day for the kids, like we do every Wednesday. And I went to the favorite store where they have the one bottle of wine that I know Rachel loves. And there was a gentleman walking out, and he had on a veteran's cap, and he was a Navy veteran. And I showed my Navy ring, and I said, "Go Navy!" And I said, "When were you in?" And he said, "I was in Vietnam. I was on the USS Forrestal." Well, if anybody knows history, that was where John McCain's plane had actually crashed onto that ship and caused an explosion. And he was there. So I'm standing in the parking lot of this store, and I'm having this conversation with this gentleman who's got this hat on. Now, he's the same age as my dad, and my dad and I have been having conversations about what I don't know about him. And I said, "Oh my gosh, my dad was in the Vietnam War." And he's like, "Oh, okay." We're going to talk about that. And then he asked about me, and we talked about the Persian Gulf and just the experiences being in the Navy. And it was a 3-minute, really cool conversation with somebody that was just like my dad. And I said, "Thank you for your service." And he said, "Thank you for yours." But it was like that great feel good moment where you hear me talk a lot about bringing heaven to earth. And that's what that was in that moment. So what I'd like to do for the cost of doing nothing going forward is to be able to just create a little piece of heaven. I feel it gives some insights. I tell you where things are in, again, my life and the life of those that are in circle with me. Got a lot of really cool, exciting things that are happening right now, and I'm looking forward to sharing those. But the biggest thing right now is this book, Walking in the Garden, Discovering God Through Psychedelics. So for any of my listeners, I'm going to put that in my show notes. I would love for you to be able to go and download the book. It's on Amazon. And more importantly, I would love your feedback. I'd love to know what you got out of it. I've had some comments from all over the place that, again, I wasn't a Christian because I used psychedelics to find God, which I think is kind of interesting. But yeah, I would love for you to be able to read this book and tell me exactly, where you are in your life and what it had done for you. But that's all I got. And I am looking forward to continue doing this show. This is Alan Wiederhold, and this is The Cost